Okay, so this recording is reviewing photosynthesis. Because of the power outage, I want to make sure that you guys have access to the information you need for your chapter quizzes that open this weekend. So how I will, and also I apologize, being at home does not have the ideal setup, but it should get the job done. But I do have a smaller whiteboard, and you will likely hear my kids running around upstairs. So hopefully you can tune that out and learn about photosynthesis. So how we'll structure this is first I'll talk about just some general structural components of cells and where the different parts of photosynthesis occur. Then we're going to dive in and learn exactly what happens during those different parts of photosynthesis, and I'll fill you in on all the details that I would like you to know, and focus on things that I think are important regarding photosynthesis. All right, so let's talk about the cell. So because microbiology, we deal with microbes that include both prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms, we will talk about where these things happen in both types of cells. Because certainly you can think of like plants obviously perform photosynthesis, but some bacteria are also able to perform photosynthesis. So it can happen in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes. All right, so first let's draw some cells. All right, so the one over here we'll say is our eukaryote. Oh, let's put this up as a prokaryote. And here's a eukaryote. All right, so the eukaryote is a little bit more complex, so I'm going to start with that one. So remember, eukaryotic cells have membrane-bound organelles. Let's do that. So where photosynthesis is going to occur, the different parts of it will be in an organelle called a chloroplast. Not all eukaryotic cells have a chloroplast, but ones that perform photosynthesis do have a chloroplast. So there's the chloroplast. I'm also going to draw a nucleus in this cell. And I put an N there for nucleus. Prokaryotes don't have membrane-bound organelles, so there's just the cell membrane and then the cytoplasm for our simple diagram's sake. All right, in a chloroplast, because remember endosymbiotic theory, they do have a double membrane. Okay, within the chloroplast, there's stacks of these really cool little structures called grana. All right, so it's kind of these stacks of discs. So the whole stack is called grana. The space between the inner membrane and the grana is called the stroma. So that space is the stroma. All right, so the grana have these membranes. Let's see if I can point in. Have these membranes. Those membranes are called thylakoid membranes. Thylakoid membranes. Those membranes, like I said, okay, so they're thylakoid membranes and they make up the grana. All right, so now let's talk about some details here. Okay, so we talked about the chloroplast. There are these pigment molecules called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll are able to capture light energy. So chlorophyll are different than chloroplast. Chlorophyll are the pigment molecules that can capture light energy. The chloroplast is the organelle. So the chlorophyll, along with other like protein pigment molecules, live in the thylakoid membranes. And they make these structures or these associations of chlorophyll plus some other protein pigment molecules, and those are called photosystems. So the photosystem is the chlorophyll and some other pigment molecules, which we're not going to those details. All right, so the thylakoid membranes contain photosystems. These photosystems, like I said, they're associations of the chlorophyll plus pigment molecules. And there's some other components in the photosystems, but just the main thing to draw is that's where the chlorophyll are in the photosystems, which are in the thylakoid membranes. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about, well, I'll get to prokaryotic cells, but we are going to talk about, with photosynthesis, there's some components, there's something called light-dependent reactions, and there's light-independent reactions. So the light-dependent reactions are going to occur in the thylakoid membranes. So these will depend on light, and that makes sense because that's where the chlorophyll are that are capturing the light energy. All right, in the stroma, the other part, the second part, is where the light-independent reactions occur. So in the stroma, that's where the light-independent reactions occur. That is also called the Kelvin-Benson cycle, and we'll talk about that more, so you don't have to memorize that yet. So light-independent happens in the stroma. That makes sense because the chlorophyll aren't in the stroma, so because they don't need to capture light energy there. They don't need that for that part. All right, for the prokaryotes, the thylakoid membranes are just located in their cell membrane. There's kind of these enfoldings that work as their thylakoid membranes. So the thylakoid membranes are in their cell membrane. So this is going to be where the light-dependent reactions would occur. The light-independent reactions would just occur in the cytoplasm. All right, so I'm going to erase this, and we're going to talk about the next part. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you a big picture view of what's going on, and then we'll talk about the nitty-gritty details. So the big picture is with photosynthesis, there's two forms of photosynthesis. There's the non-cyclic reactions, the non-cyclic pathway. The non-cyclic pathway has the light-dependent and the light-independent reactions. So again, in the non-cyclic pathway, there's the light-independent and light-dependent reactions, the two things that we figured out where they were at. Photosynthesis can also include something called a cyclic pathway, which is a little bit different. It doesn't have those two subcomponents. Okay, so now we're going to zoom into just the non-cyclic pathway. The non-cyclic pathway. And remember, there's two parts of it. Just like with carbohydrate catabolism, you had the parts of like glycolysis, the prep step, all of that, the citric acid cycle. The non-cyclic pathway has the light-dependent reactions and then the light-independent reactions as like the two steps. so light-dependent reactions, light-independent reactions. All right, so big picture, in the light-dependent reactions, you're going to get inputs of light energy and water, and essentially what's going to be produced is ATP and one of the carrier electron molecules, which is called NADPH. So in carbohydrate catabolism, we have NADH. Photosynthesis, it has NADPH, and you'll remember that because for the photosynthesis one, there's a P in the middle. NADPH is the electron carrier molecule for photosynthesis. So at the end of the light and dependent reactions, you just produce ATP and NADPH. All right, and then I'll also add that chlorophyll capture light energy, and then ATP and NADH are produced. Okay, so that just says chlorophyll capture light energy. I know that got small there. All right, so what happens after this is that ATP and the NADPH get fed into the light-independent reactions. So with those components, as well as some carbon dioxide, the end product will be glucose.